Welcome to this week's episode of the Full Scope Cybercast, Safeguarding the Digital Frontier. I'm your host, Matt Van Pelt, and with me today is Full Scope IT's CTO, Dan Wolk. How are you today, Dan?
Doing great, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Also, Brian Amadeo from Business Development. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
All right. And Matthew Kelly, a member of the Full Scope IT technical team. How are you today, Matthew?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
All
right. Let's get this episode started with breaking down our buzzword.
Breaking down the buzzword.
This week's buzzword is insider threats. An insider threat is a security risk that originates from within the organization. These threats can manifest in various forms, including data breaches, unauthorized downloading of sensitive data, and even cyber attacks initiated within the organization. Understanding the types of insider threats is crucial for effective detection and prevention. So, who would be considered an insider in these insider threats?
Dan.
Yes, it's
Dan
me.
is the biggest insider threat. I'm not even lying.
This is true. Well, threat versus he's capable.
I think the point is you can go from capable to being a threat very easily. When you look at things like disgruntled employees, you go from a trusted employee to an ex-employee to disgruntled, and if you have access to even just data, you can become a threat. I know in the blog they also talk about how somebody posing as an insider can be a threat, but I think it's easier to talk about who's an insider with that exception, and really any employee, past employee, IT support personnel, even ex IT support personnel. Has the potential of going from somebody you trusted with your data to being a threat. And also, it depends on what kind of threats we're talking about, because I'm sort of talking about malicious threats up till now, but sometimes the biggest threat is a star employee who just doesn't have the right training and writes their password on a sticky note and leaves it stuck on their phone receiver. And they may have been your biggest salesperson for the past year, but they just turned themselves into a threat.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest ones that I find too. It's more people that are your star person that are just, I'm so busy, I'm doing all these things, I don't have time for security. And I think that's when I talk to customers a lot of the time, it's just, security takes time. It's going to take time out of your productivity. Like, you're going to take a hit depending on, what kind of security is involved, but that's that needed security. Like, yeah, sure. Is it easy if nobody had passwords? I didn't need to authenticate to anything. I can get all the information I needed like instantly. Sure. Like that would be great. That would obviously help my productivity, but that security, so, we don't have, any breaches. That's important. So I think that's a huge one for people. It's like the malicious ones. I mean, I think that's a more obvious one. And then the ones that I think a lot of people don't think about insider threats are just like you said. I had a situation when there was a school and that we still do IT for. And I remember being on site and I see this woman that had her domain username and password just written on a notepad at her desk. And I mean, she's having, grade 6, 7, 8, these kids, who knows what they're doing, but she just has her user and password written down there. So that means anybody who knew anything could just get onto the network, start accessing kids' files. Yeah, bad news. So
you get an A. You get an A.
You get an A. Yeah, so I immediately ripped that up. But yeah, I mean, people like I honestly just don't think they know better. So to Dan's point, I mean, that training is invaluable because you don't know what some people are doing, and it's real scary.
Yeah, I'm sensing a theme across our past few episodes where training seems to be just the most
Oh yeah.
important thing in the world we can do for all of these things we've discussed.
Or like when we talk to an organization and they go like, "Oh, well, everybody else uses MFA, but not the executives because they're, like you said, Matt, like they're busy."
That's my
Wait a
favorite.
minute,
Yeah.
those are the targets. If anything, flip that around if you have to. But yeah,
I think sometimes organizations, leadership in organizations, need to come up with a way to think of what cybersecurity is about, and I very often go to thinking about how you secure your office building. Even though a lot of businesses are more and more virtual, and some are completely virtual, it's easy to think about how you would deal with the keys to your office building, and you wouldn't want your employees putting the address to the office and the hours of the office on a keychain and then dropping it at a bus stop and not telling you. It seems like it's pretty easy to understand how to deal with keys, and you just have to think about how does that relate to the computer systems and the IT systems.
yeah, or any file, right? All the information as a whole.
I had an interesting thing happen to me like 3 weeks ago. So I was at a client office, and they know who I am. Like I did the onboarding, like they know my face, receptionist knows me. So I go in, and they had a new policy now where everybody has to sign in, like no matter who you are, no matter how many times you've been there. But this was like after I did the onboarding, so people knew me. So I came in and I'm like, hey, I got to go work on a thing. And they're like, and the receptionist, you could tell she was like exasperated. Like she didn't want to do this. She's like, yeah, you got to like sign that paper or something just to say you were here. And I was like, my hands are full. And I'm like, yeah, do I? And she's like, yeah, just go ahead. So even though she was given a directive from her direct supervisor and our owner of the company that everybody, and this is a facility that does stuff with kids. So they need to know. I mean, there could be parental situations with, who has custody, like crazy stuff. But, she just let me go through without signing my name or anything. And she knew she had to. And she just completely ignored that. And, to my point too was, okay, how do you know that Full Scope didn't just fire me that day? And I'm going to each one of my clients or each one of their clients to screw them over. Like I'm not Full Scope anymore, right? Like, so I don't sign that down. So it's like your word versus mine if I was there or not. And you just kind of let me through with no prior authorization. It's just stuff like that where I feel you either have somebody that's, again, not trained or just doesn't care and just, totally just flaunts the rules. Those are like big situations too. Like, if the mom picks up the kid all the time and then, all of a sudden she can't pick up that kid anymore, says the court, but that company does, they don't know that. And she doesn't sign in, and there's a lot of issues. So it's really interesting. I had the same thing with a hotel that we used to manage where they knew who I was, but they just let me, walk back. Like a lot of people, in that hotel, they had a lot of employees. Some of them didn't. I just walked right in the server room every single time. Nobody questioned me. I'm standing in the server room with tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Nobody ever questioned who I was. Sometimes I would go there after hours, so I'd wear a hoodie. Like, I'm just some dude. I look like just some guy, and I'm just standing in the server room. I never got questioned. So the physical security part is really a really interesting challenge, I think, for companies.
And you also have to look at what you're protecting. So far, we've been talking about physical access to servers, which would kind of get you the keys to the kingdom. But even individual data sets can be looked at for how they could be attacked by an insider. Um, for example, you wouldn't want your salespeople to necessarily have full detailed customer database after they leave the company. Um, a lot of states won't really uphold any non-compete agreements, and that data could give them a leg up with their new employer.
I've also seen some stuff too, and this is a question, Dan, I have for you. So, I have run into situations before. If we switch back to the malicious part of it, where there is an employee that they did go AWOL, and they did get pissed off at something, and then they ended up downloading like all files off Google Drive or SharePoint. I forgot what it was, and they just emailed them to themselves. So we look through the logs, and we saw the company was aware this person did that. There's lawsuits going on, crazy stuff. But I saw the logs of them just downloading literally everything in the company, file share that they had access to, and they just emailed to themselves or put it on a USB drive or something like that. So my question, what do you suggest companies do? USB is easy, right? We could block USBs, but how do we stop, a user from intentionally somehow grabbing all of the company data and just personally putting it somewhere else for malicious reasons?
At some level, it's completely impossible. If you give employees access to the data, there's always a way to exfiltrate it. Short of what very secure government operations do, where you have to run everybody through metal detector and you're not allowed to bring the electronics into the facilities. But at a typical organizations these days, anybody who's carrying a smartphone in their pocket can record a video of what's on their screen and scroll through an entire database, record it, and walk out the door. And while there may be logs that they looked through the database, that may be a normal part of their job that would never be flagged. But there are systems that can be put in place that look for patterns without going emails and uploads to various sites that would flag improper behavior with the data. Office 365 has data loss prevention functionality, and there's a slew of other providers out there that latch into various email and cloud systems.
I had a meeting with a prospect that their marketing company. So this is a different way of this whole insider thing. So they had a marketing company that had all the credentials to log into their systems basically, so that they could manage website flow, calls. They also manage their phone system. So they would take the leads coming in from say the website, and then they would create something to track it and figure it out. So they ended up stealing all of their information and replicating their business to do this in other markets. And when we met with them, they were like, "How could we have stopped that? How could Fullscope have prevented that?" I'm like, "You gave the keys to the castle to somebody. That's a trust issue that you there's a chance you have to take. I mean, what could you possibly do in that situation?" And I couldn't come up with a scenario. Like when they were like, "What could you have done to stop that?" I was like, "Yeah, that's not what we do."
Yeah, the ownership of your internet domain is something that can be very easily taken advantage of. And we've seen a lot of organizations just very casually give full control of that to web design firms who may not really fully understand the security implications of what they're dealing with. We do have customers that give us full access to that. However, we're very aware of how sensitive that is, and take extra steps to make sure that we keep that secure. But it's a big problem. I would definitely recommend everybody review the security of how their domains are registered, and how their DNS providers and their web providers are securing this, because those are places that are there. It's gives you control to the company, but it's not actually internal systems. So it would be much harder to notice what's going on in a situation you just brought about, where somebody takes over a domain. Once you lose control, it could take days or weeks to recover that control.
and this would relate to any vendor, right? So this is anytime you've got somebody or a contractor or a vendor in that situation. So, and you can take what we do. I mean, we really take on a lot of responsibility, or companies that do what we do take on a lot of responsibility. And I think that's an important note to when people are looking for our types of services. You should vet them. There's some, shouldn't just hire any technology company.
I think it's tough too. Because coming at it from like a business owner's perspective, it's like there's so many things like you know what you don't know, and I think that's like a superpower in its own right, right? Like if I don't know what I don't know, that's perfect. I can hire people. But when you hire somebody, it's like how do I? It's tough to trust somebody. Like yeah, you could say like ask maybe some of their other clients like do they do a good job? It's like yeah, on the help desk side they answer stuff, but I think too. It's difficult to see like are they actually good. So for example, like I had an onboarding probably like 2 months ago, and I was like, okay, well, it's time to transfer the domain. Like they this is the web design firm or their IT firm, somebody owned whichever one, they own the domain, and I'm like, hey, throw it over to our account or give me access to it. I need to change some things, right? So this guy, this is on GoDaddy. He sends me an invitation for delegated access, so to their account, so I can see the domain that I need to make changes on. He delegates me his entire account, and they're like a web dev shop. So now I had admin access to like 200 of their clients' domains. I could do whatever I wanted to that. I had their domains. I could change their DNS. I could do anything because they made a mistake. And for me, it's like I don't want to do anything malicious. I don't want anything to do with lawsuits. Like it's just like that's not my style, obviously. So I was like, hey, dude, you made a mistake. Like you really want to learn how to do this. Like you cannot just delegate access and not know what you're doing because you just gave me your entire client list, access to their domains, and I could do whatever malicious stuff that I wanted to. And he would not have known that until I said something. So it's really scary, especially with domains too. It's like what Dad was saying, like you lose your domain, you lose access to that. You don't understand. That's like your email doesn't exist anymore. Your website doesn't, your company does not exist anymore. And a lot of people just, they don't care. It's like that second, GoDaddy, use your passwords, fine. Like they don't think it's, think it through, or maybe they don't know like how important domains actually are. To go off on a tangent.
Well, and that's actually how this conversation led. So that marketing company that I'm referring to, the new marketing company had then asked me about, hey, we realize we have a lot of credentials for all of our clients, and that means we could be the vulnerability. And so they asked how to uh, prevent that or protect themselves so that they could protect their clients. And so obviously, a password management tool was an easy solution as far as that goes. So yeah, even though there's a lot of obvious ones, sometimes it's you don't like kind of what you're saying, Matthew, where you don't know what you don't know, and they didn't even realize their own implication, and then it just continues to grow as you dig a little bit deeper and realize, oh, and who has access to my stuff that I have access to everybody else's stuff, and now they have access to everybody else's stuff. There's a lot of vulnerabilities that aren't obvious in those situations.
I think it all comes back to like the insider threat thing too, of being just like sometimes it's just complacency. Like one of the biggest insider threats is complacency. Like I am complacent. I'm complicit. With how all this works. Like it's been working like this. Do I need to do an audit? Nah, I know how it works. And then you accidentally miss the 3 people that quit 6 months ago and still have access to everything. So I think it's a huge part of it.
That school situation you're talking about, why didn't she just sign you in? If your hands were full, it would have been just as easy and it still would have been documented.
Dude, passwords are so hard. Come on. Well, that's the same thing. That goes back to like we're talking about too, like the passwords. Like how many passwords do I run into that are like whatever season it is, and then whatever year it is with an exclamation. So right now it's like winter 2024 exclamation. Like I swear to God, if we look through like somehow figured out a way to look at all passwords of our clients, I bet you 30-40% of passwords would literally be that. And then next in spring it's going to be spring 2024 exclamation.
Is it 100%. Winter Metallica 2024?
Yeah, Metallica. Callback.
The rollback. All the long-time listeners.
And there's no easy solution to a lot of these problems either. You really have to just keep working at it and try to incrementally make things better and better and better.
You have to care.
That would be a good starting point. Well, we care. You can pay us to care. And we'll just keep telling you need to care. And hopefully we'll get there one of these days.
And hopefully people will think about this before they have an issue.
Well, if it isn't a tech tip.
That takes us to this week's tech tip. Detecting and preventing insider threats proactively requires a multifaceted approach that combines robust security policies, advanced technology solutions, and ongoing training. Here are some strategies and tools to help organizations detect and prevent insider threats effectively. Have security policies in place. Limit who has access to intellectual property and trade secrets. Implement technology solutions such as endpoint security, real time behavior analytics, and multi factor authentication. Hold regular training sessions and awareness programs. And last but certainly not least, partner with an expert like Full Scope IT. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, check out our blog post called What Are Insider Threats? There will be a link in this week's episode description, and we will also have a link posted on our website, fullscopeit.com/resources.
This is the story of the week.
Listen up!
So that brings us to our story of the week. We actually have two of them. Story number one, brought to us by bleepingcomputer.com, is MITM phishing attacks can let attackers unlock and steal a Tesla. So researchers demonstrated how they could conduct a man-in-the-middle phishing attack to compromise Tesla accounts, unlocking cars and starting them. Yay. Only a matter of time, right?
Yeah, now I'm curious what's
Well, once everybody has a Tesla, it won't be worth stealing them anymore.
Well, that's going to take a while.
Is that the same thing?
A couple more years.
What's that tool? Is it the Dolphin tool, right, Dan? Is that the name of it? I
Flipper
forgot.
Zero.
Flipper. Close enough.
Yeah, it's in the
tool.
article. That's what they that's what they used in their proof of concept.
That's what I figured. Yeah, that Flipper tool is crazy.
Yeah, they're banning them in places, but it really doesn't make sense because it's basically a Raspberry Pi with a handful of different radio modules pre-integrated.
Yeah.
But ban away. We can just 3D print a Flipper Zero shaped case and jam our Raspberry Pi in there.
Amazon had pressure like a year ago to ban those for sale on there, and they were like, well, it doesn't really change what it is or how to get it.
Yeah, it's like when they were trying to ban encryption and made it so only the bad guys had the good encryption. The most interesting thing about this article that I found was one of the researchers' names is Tommy Misk, who is almost related to Elon Musk, but
so close.
One letter off.
I thought I read it wrong the first time I read that first. I was like, did they get his name wrong?
I can see their point. This is there's really a lot of simple authentication out there for all sorts of different services where you can do this kind of man-in-the-middle attack and trick people into giving their username, password, and a one-time password. And if you're watching it, you can take advantage of that. And the only trick with the Teslas is to really abuse it. You have to be close enough to the car to abuse it. So the scenario they brought up was they made a fake hotspot to sit near a supercharger and figured people who have 10, 15 minutes to kill and don't want to use their data may hop on this fake hotspot and give up the keys to their Tesla, literally. And Tesla's point is it's not worth fixing. This functionality makes it so easy for 99.999% of the Tesla owners that why should you make all of them jump through one extra hoop for once in a while somebody may try to go and steal a Tesla doing this.
How hard is a push notification, though? Yeah, I mean that.
I think you'd be surprised.
Really, regression testing any of these changes can be very costly, and not only is it a small number of people who are even going to be at the supercharger with the guy with the Flipper Zero, but only 1 in 100 or 1,000 people who have a Tesla don't have an awesome data plan on their phone and would be like, oh, I'm gonna save a gigabyte from my 800 gigabyte data plan so that I can watch Netflix for 15 minutes while my car's charging. So it's really, really a small number of people that could get caught up in an attack like this. And it's hard. It is harder to fix than it sounds. But why wouldn't Tesla put it on the roadmap? They put in some really good ideas that don't really change the workflow, like making it so that you have to have one of the keys with you or that you have to be inside the car. And that might make it secure. But hey, if I had a Tesla and I wanted to know that as a last resort, if I left the house and I only carry my phone, as many Tesla owners do, if for some reason your phone got reset or something, or you switched to a new phone, that you could still get into your car. And a lot of Tesla owners would probably look at that as a good security feature, that it's less likely that they're going to get locked out of their car.
Our second story of the week comes from itbrew.com. App-controlled bidet comes with security concerns and solutions. Bemis Manufacturing's BioBidet debuted a new Bluetooth-controlled toilet seat fixture that's controlled from your phone at this year's Consumer Electronics Show. The Bemis Living app, which controls the device, eliminates the need for yet another piece of hardware sprinkled in among your toiletries.
Sprinkled in. Right?
I know, great choice of words they used in this thing.
Oh, the outro of the article, that particular last line, we'll have to include that. It's hilarious. They got every pun they could in one sentence.
You almost have. That's like that. It's like a pun article.
Yeah. I don't know if I agree with don't need to bring one more thing in. I almost think I'd rather have a remote and not have to bring my phone in, but I might be in the minority there for most people.
I was thinking whether you have your phone or not, at some point you want your phone to not be something you're handling in the whole process.
Exactly.
Does it say anywhere in the article that this app is going to control anything else in your bathroom? Because if it's just for the bidet, I mean, can it also flush your toilet for you? I mean, I don't know. That they might want to add more things. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's like one of those Internet of Things that is so unnecessary. Like even from like my living room, like I have all smart bulbs. It's like, I can control them with my phone, but 99.99% of the time I just analog flip a switch. It's like I'm not going to pull my phone out, like Face ID myself to turn on my lights. It's the same thing with like a toilet. Like how often do you want to change the LED color of inside the bowl? Like what?
Well, if you tie it into Google Assistant or something, being able to speak and turn the lights on and off from across the room, I see has some value. But I don't need to use a bidet from any further away than where it is. So.
Okay, but you could do so you could do sanitary. It could be from a sanitary reason, because if you do use Google Assistant, you could just say like, I'm not gonna. I have a Google here, so I'm not gonna say it. But you could say the words and then say flush a toilet. That could be for sanitary reasons,
right? But they didn't say that it had that feature. I would be all about that.
What would
Let's just assume it does.
Would you just have to say, "Hey"?
If they would add
Google,
that in, then I would say
whatever you want.
And you have to specify
Yeah,
which
if
one.
it had
Like,
that feature, it would be worth all the security concerns. And really, they bring up that you could prank people in the bathroom.
Oh,
Personally, I
dude,
think
yeah, that's exactly what I want to do.
I think that's a selling point for the product.
Relationship ender.
Yeah, like this one was just the add-on feature to your existing commode, right? And then there was a Kohler one that's a full smart toilet as a whole. So, I mean, this one's really just the bidet feature.
So to speak.
Yeah, I mean, what about like, hey, Google, heat my seat? You know, who doesn't want a warm seat?
True.
I'm giving
Phoenix,
them gold
Arizona.
here. I'm giving them gold. I hope they listen to the podcast.
True. The prank thing, like that's such an easy way to sleep in the guest room, you know? I mean,
What is that? Is that a big remote behind in the wall behind it anyway?
Yes. In the picture in the article, that is what a bidet remote looks like. It seems like it's in a really inconvenient place, like on the wall behind you is not really
Gotta
the
stretch
best
first.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my calisthenics and my morning meeting in.
Right.
I don't really have a problem with them turning it into an app as long as it also has the remote. It just seems like at this point in the internet, embedding a Bluetooth chip and adding the code into something that's already electronic like this is it's kind of like a why not thing. It costs almost nothing and it might get you the sales.
That's a good point.
You don't even have to write half the code anymore. You can just ask your favorite AI to pop out some code. And
are you using puns now?
I really, I'm in the why not camp on this one.
I'm in the
Okay.
I think you solved the problem I didn't have camp on this one.
It's the same thing with Internet of Things, though, right? It's like one of those things. Like, how often are you going to update the firmware of your toilet, right? So, like, if you have this Internet of Things toilet, and then all of a sudden it's like some crazy security thing comes out where all somebody has to do is be on your Wi-Fi and open up an app, and they can completely control whatever the device is. It's like that's my huge thing about Internet of Things. It's like nobody updates this crap. You know, no regular homeowner is ever even gives it. Oh, sorry,
Another pun.
Another pun. There you go. No, yeah, they don't care at all about security, so
you better wipe your mouth.
Well,
yeah.
They'd have to put it in the marketing, like update as you download. I don't know.
Well, Bluetooth does imply some proximity, right? At least
you got a good 3,000 feet, something like that.
But that stuff always connects to the Wi-Fi.
On how you,
depending.
They said it was only Bluetooth. This one. But it's far enough to make it to the other side of the bathroom door for a normal bathroom.
Oh, yeah. Or even like if you have an adjacent wall like in a hallway situation, there's a lot of those.
Well, now that we've flushed this podcast right down the toilet.
Just waiting for it.
Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the Full Scope Cybercast, Safeguarding the Digital Frontier. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode, so until then, stay behind your firewall.